Hi, I am Carol Brammer, and I am the Artistic Director of Liberty Exhibition Hall here in Northside, and also the Artistic Director of Kids Act Out.
Are you from Cincinnati, Carol? When and where were you born?
It feels like I'm from Cincinnati. I think truly when you come here, you don't leave. But no, I grew up in Shepherdsville, Kentucky, and I am actually from Louisville, and I went to school there at the Youth Performing Arts. I actually used a fake address to get into the school. I was a little kid out in the country, and I just saw that school and thought I had to go there. So I talked my minister into allowing me to use his address to get into the school. A little controversy there, but it's the best thing that organized religion ever did for me. But no, I grew up in Shepherdsville and then came to Cincinnati in 1991.
What was it like growing up in Shepherdsville? You gave a little bit there, but
Shepherdsville at the time was just a little tiny town. In fact, there were still wild horses when my parents moved there, and there were no apartments or anything like that. So while my parents built our house, we actually lived in the KOA, and we lived there for a year and a half while my parents actually hand built our house. There was just one choice for school. There was one choice for elementary, middle school, and high school. And by the time I got close to high school, I just couldn't imagine that being the only world I knew. And I actually had a teacher introduce me to speech and debate team. And that was the first time I came to Cincinnati. We actually had a competition at Princeton High School. And then I kind of got the bug that I knew there was a world out there that stories mattered, narrative mattered, and I never looked back from that. But Shepherdsville is a great little town. It's actually grown in a crazy way. I don't recognize it now. My mom still lives there, but I don't actually go back much. So.
You touched on speech and debate team. How did you get interested in arts, performing arts? Is that kind of your
It was.
entree?
It was one teacher that just, Mrs. Duncan was her name, and I don't think she actually fit into Shepherdsville either in a lot of ways. She was very early a woman in that field. For Shepherdsville, it was always the men who led speech and debate team. She was the only woman to ever lead it. And she just kept telling me that, you know, there were so many things you could be in life, and that she felt a natural knack for expressing myself, which is kind of funny because I was pretty nonverbal apparently till I was about 4, and then I made up for it. But she saw something in me, and I don't even know what happened to her, what has happened to her. I'm assuming that she's probably not with us anymore because she was older then. But it was because of her. And then after that, I don't know exactly how I heard about the Performing Arts School in Louisville, probably just through other students or kids. But I was obsessed with it and knew that I had to be there. And then once I was able to go to that school, it just kept going from there. I started working professionally really young as a junior and senior, doing commercials and stage work, and went to Europe my senior year to perform, and then decided that CCM was my next goal that was in my eye that I would not let go of. And that's actually what brought me to Cincinnati, though ironically, at that point, I was not able to go to CCM. I got accepted but could not afford it. So I kept living here in Cincinnati thinking that I would eventually work enough jobs to afford it. But there's more to that story. It ends well, but that's what brought me to Cincinnati. So when I was finally able to go to the Performing Arts in Louisville, I studied theater and music theater. And I graduated from there in 1987.
What year did you get here to Cincinnati then? Was that 86 or so?
It was actually, I think I said earlier 90, but it was actually, would have been the would have been the fall of 88. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, you did mention. So you were not able to afford CCM.
I know, because it's all I wanted. And ironically, I had been given a scholarship to NKU, a pretty sizable one, and also to Loyola. I had done the general auditions in Chicago and had gotten some nice offers from other schools. But back then, especially, I just thought I knew what I had to have and what I wanted and where my heart was. So I don't regret it, because being here in Cincinnati has actually, I mean, I guess I don't know what my life would have been like if I'd ended up in Chicago or somewhere else, but I can't imagine not backing into all the great things that have happened in Cincinnati. So I'm glad it worked out that way. But at the time, it was really devastating. I just couldn't work enough jobs to try and, pull it off. So my parents had a connection at Cincinnati Bible College and Seminary in Price Hill. And so I ended up going there and for 2 years, I think, before I left and ran away to Africa for a year. Because the whole Bible college thing, there's a lot of values there that were great. But when they asked me to sign a contract that I wouldn't dance, I refused. So I stayed at the college, but I just crossed it out. And it was funny how it was listed, because under the moral values at the time of the college, which this college doesn't exist anymore, so it's okay to talk about it. But a lot of good people, a lot of good things. But on the contract, it said that you wouldn't drink. I wasn't much of a drinker at that time. And you wouldn't smoke. And then it said dancing frowned upon. And I just always thought about what that day was like around that board meeting. They're like drinking, smoking, dancing, oh, really frowned upon. So. But yes, so I didn't stay. I went a couple of years there, and then found my way to Africa and worked in the government school for a year, and then came back.
That is crazy that they would make you sign a contract. It's like Footloose.
It is like Footloose.
No dancing in this town. Yeah, I'm sure that would not resonate with you as a musical theater performer.
No, it seemed crazy at the time. And at that age, most people are just full of their own spirit, and that they're not going to let people tell them what they can and cannot do. That's a rite of passage. So, at that age, but yeah.
Could I ask you during this time, what were some of your favorite roles or productions you were part of, kind of in that, like in your college and young, like post-college phase?
Yeah, actually, so most of my roles were in high school, and I loved the productions I was in there. A musical review of historical music review was one of my favorite things I did my senior year, and it took you from their idea of the birth of music all the way through the current time, which at that point was just the 80s. But that was wonderful. Pippin at the time in high school was one of my favorite musicals to do. But then when I came to college, I did Meet Me in St. Louis. I did some works of that nature, but really there wasn't a lot available because I wasn't at CCM, and the Bible College didn't really do much in that way. So I did a couple of community theater things, and then I went to Africa. But then when I came home, it was a great year, by the way. I had to maybe go around the world to find myself. But again, it broadened my view of how we all are living in these little microcosm worlds, and they have great value, but I just couldn't get enough of understanding or coming to understand how other people lived, and their histories and their stories. And their culture. And I had been raised in a very small environment. And so going to Africa probably put me firmly on the course, that I am now living out today, just by broadening my mind and helping me see other folks were just as important as all of us, as myself. But when I came home, I then quickly met my former partner and father of my 4 children. And then once again, I just completely changed tracks. And I had a baby in 91 and my son Taylor, and then ended up having 3 more kiddos, 4 total, 4 and 7 years. So I was a really young mom.
You had 4 kids in 7 years.
I did.
Wow.
I know. Yeah.
Before I ask you about all that, can I ask you, why Africa? Why did you go to Africa? Where in Africa?
Sure. So, yes, I went to Zimbabwe and Zambia. And primarily, I worked in the government school in Zambia. And then in Zimbabwe, I had acquaintances there and that were working with a group called the Flying Mission. And they were agricultural missionaries, basically. And I got to know them again through, ironically, through the same man that let me use his address to go to the school. He knew this family there that were helping rebuild after the Rhodesian War. They were helping rebuild the waterways. And I went and lived with them and then just applied for a government school job, which is crazy because I was so young. But they were glad to have me. And that is truly how I went there, was just because somebody knew somebody and I got on a plane. So it was much easier, I think, to get visas back then and things like that. So
That's cool. And when you're young, you can just leave. You can just go.
You can just go. And I was there at a really interesting time because they were just post-war. And seeing how people try to rebuild from something like that, and also to see the pride that they had to have somewhat regained control over their own country, and then also they were living under dictatorship still, even after the war. Mugabe for Zimbabwe was remarkably brutal, and so it was an eye-opener to see again. From just coming from Shepherdsville to see something like that.
Yeah, get a real look at the world and look at global politics. Yeah.
Yeah, and no understanding of how impactful it is on a group of people. To survive something like that. How many decades it takes to rebuild a country, which is pretty relevant right now too.
I was just gonna say, I think we're gonna need that same empathy in the present day, huh? Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. That's really cool. And tell me again, when did you come back? What year?
Oh, so I came back in 90. Yeah, came back, and I think in 90, because I came back at the, it's been so long ago, end of 90, and then, I had my son in 91, so.
How did you meet your partner?
And he's my former partner.
Sorry, yes.
Still great friends.
I think I've met him a few times, yeah.
You have, I think, yeah. Yeah, he partners with one of the programs here for music at the Liberty. I met him because I liked a guy in Zimbabwe. So I liked a fellow there, and it was around holiday time, and I wanted to send gifts to he and his family. And so I needed to make some money quick because parcel shipping back then was insurmountable for me. And so I went around looking for jobs to do, and he was managing apartments over in Mount Auburn, and because he's a college student, he was managing apartments, and he needed someone to paint. So I stayed up for 2 nights straight painting with him, and we got to know each other. And then the next day he said, "Do you want to come to a concert in Indianapolis with me?" I was like, "Sure," and we were just friends. But it grew from there, and then needless to say, I still sent those presents, but yeah, things ended with the guy in Zimbabwe.
Okay, so met him and then had your son in 91. And then you said too, did you guys move in together? Kind of what's the trajectory of your life in that time?
Sure. We got married. So we got married at Memorial Hall, and we were the first wedding at Memorial Hall in a very long time before the renovation. So the pictures are quite fun. Like there's big chunks of plaster missing and stuff. I love it. It was exactly what I wanted. To be married on a stage. So yeah, we had a great wedding at Memorial Hall, and then we had the 4 children pretty quickly in a row, as I said, and I loved it. Next to, I would say, the only thing that I even comes close to how much I adore and love having my children, is the arts, is theater, but of course they are first. But I didn't even know how much I loved being a mom until I wasn't prepared for it, but they need some pretty basic things, and I was able to do that. We were. So then we were just bouncing through life pretty well. He was in grad school, and I had stopped all my formal education at that time to be with them, to also work. We would split. I would work nights. He would work days and go to school, raise our kiddos. We lived in Westwood and bought our first house there. Our first mortgage was $700 for a whole dang house, right? I think about those days. And that was even hard to make, but we did. And then we had this huge bump in the road. So when our youngest was not yet 2, Craig became very, very ill, and he had cancer. And so he had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it was pretty aggressive. So we packed up the kids and ended up living in 4 different states over 3 years, coming back and forth to Cincinnati. And we had wonderful help from people and family, but we, at the end of the many years, we had kind of exhausted all of the resources of what was out there for his type of cancer. It was just extremely resistant, and we even went to Omaha, Nebraska, to the leading specialist there, and we were told he was going to die. And so we came home and thought that was, just a matter of time. Wanted him to spend time with the kids. And then we had a doc here in Cincinnati, TJ Reddington, and he's retired now. But TJ, he was a personal friend that Craig knew through his work. But he said, "Hey, I have a buddy at Jewish Kenwood," and he said, "Let's just go meet him." And he was a transplant doctor, a bone marrow transplant doctor. And he was this guy that was a Texas, rancher kind of guy. I guess that's where he was from, but that's how he looked when he walked in the room in the middle of Cincinnati. Like he had just come off, bringing horses into the barn or something. And he said, "Well, let's get in here and do a transplant. What's the worst that's going to happen? You'll die." So he took a risk when we were turned down by the other facilities in the United States for the transplant, because that was the only last thing that they could try. But they didn't believe his body was strong enough in Omaha, so they refused to do it after living there for months, preparing to do it. And so Craig went in there, and it's a month-long process. And he received an autologous transplant, which he was able to use his own marrow, and which is also remarkable, so he doesn't have to do rejection drugs. And that was 20 years ago. So he is well, and someone took a chance on him, and that it was crazy. But that was huge for us because at that point, we didn't, we had become such a strong force to make him well, and at the same time kept our children healthy and together, and we chose to homeschool them and keep them with us when we were traveling. And after that, I think he was as shocked to live. I wasn't that shocked that he lived. I kind of thought he would, but he was very shocked that he lived. And then it's hard. It's hard to reboot when somebody tells you those things for all those years, and you've prepared yourself to not be here, and then you are. But that was a huge thing for our family. We went on to stay a couple and keep our family together up and through our youngest son. By the time he was about 12 or so, we decided to stay married, but we were separated, but stayed very close friends, and now we are formally divorced, but still good buddies. Children getting married is what we were, but I don't regret it. It was great.
You said from the time that your youngest son was 2 to the time that he was about 12, so a good 10-year period there.
Right, that's how long we stayed, that Craig and I continued on as a couple, but the cancer itself was from the time our youngest Sawyer was 2. I believe he received the transplant when Sawyer was 6. So it's 5 or 6 in that realm, and it's hard. It's hard to go back and be extremely specific because I'd have to dig through the dates. But transplants are an interesting thing because the process itself takes a month, but then you're almost 2 years in recovery. A year of isolation for some people. For him, that was true, and then another year to get any kind of strength back. So.
So at this point in your life, you're pretty family focused. When do you feel like you kind of came back to the arts, or is there like a turning point?
Yeah. So there was, when the kids were really little and we were living in Westwood, I was constantly going to the library and pulling parenting books because, I didn't have a lot of resources at home, like meaning my parents. I didn't have a lot of resources in that way. And so I just started reading, whatever I could get my hands on about child rearing and all these methodologies and all of these theories. And then I started seeing this connection between theater and the principles and practices of theater, because I did take it very seriously and, of course, wanted to professionally study it. And then good practices for children and how they learn to express themselves and how they learn to interact with the world, that there was a lot of crossover. And I kept this little green book, is what I would call it, because it was green. And I started writing down all the correlations that I saw between what I believed was some sound parenting strategies, and then also the principles and practices of theater, professional theater. When I say that, I mean not just the methodologies of how to be an actor, but then how to put up a production. Your family is one big production, and all the working parts of being an ensemble and things like that. And so I started making those correlations in this book. And then in 2009, I met some people that lived down the street. They had just moved in, and they were from Los Angeles, and I don't think they weren't originally from there, but they were from Los Angeles at that time, and they were looking to continue their production company from the Midwest. And I ended up touring with them for a little bit. And then my first theater, the Clifton Performance Theater on Ludlow, which is now the Clifton Comedy Club, built that out with that family from it was a wall-to-wall carpeting bank annex by the time we got it. And we renovated it into the theater that's there now. And that's where I first started developing my children's program, which was called Clifton Performance Theater. Now rebranded it over the last 5 years as Kids Act Out. And that's where I started putting into practice everything that was in that green book. And I started out with just 50 kids the first summer, and now it's grown to over 300 plus in 7 schools. But that's how I got back into it. Again, my children, kind of led me full circle back, and the first theater was opened in 2009.
That's fascinating. And Kids Act Out is a great name. That's funny. That's good.
Thank you.
Now, is this like a nonprofit? Is this a company? Is this like you said you go to schools and things like that.
Yes.
How did this entity form?
So ironically, again, that couple that I first built out the first theater with, and I bought them out sometime later, and they moved to Tennessee, but they wanted the space just mostly for recording music. They had a very different vision. They were not theater people. They were musicians. And so at that time, she actually came out of growing up in a communist situation. Yeah, and she really didn't have a lot of trust in the nonprofit world just because of her own experiences as a child and that sort of thing. So she was like, no, I don't want this to be a nonprofit. And that's where we disagreed. When I did go ahead, when the needs changed and I took over Clifton Performance Theater solely, I did go ahead and activate the nonprofit sector portion of it, which is actually Clifton Players. God-awful name. It's just what we thought of back then. And for a bunch of creatives, man, terrible name. Although I love Clifton, but so many better names out there. So yeah, Clifton Players. And that's how we started producing our adult professional company. And that was the second part of it, was the children's was the first part. And then the second part was the adult professional company. And so the children's portion of it is mine solely, although I have used it to prop up and expand the theater itself to what you see today. The children's programming almost solely funded everything that was happening at Clifton Performance Theater. And it was a much smaller enterprise back then. It was just, it's a very small, sweet, little, tiny storefront theater. This beast takes a lot more. But that's how it started. So I just kept rolling every bit of money into that came through the children's programming back into building the nonprofit. And I was able to do that back then. And I'm glad I did it. But that's how it all got started. But now the children's programming is a portion of the Liberty Exhibition Hall, but there's lots of other programs here now. And then when it goes to schools, that is, Kids Act Out is my intellectual property, and I take it to the schools, so myself. In that smaller space, in the smaller theater, I mentioned that first it was just the children's programming, and then phase 2 was again built on that idea that we are looking around town for those who are at the top of their game, that we just get so excited, to want to be working with and learning from and that sort of thing. So I met a woman named Kathy Springfield who she was at the time the director, had just retired from Xavier University for being the head of the acting department there. And I said, hey, I want to get in the room with the actors you admire the most in this town. And so she's like, oh, sure. And I don't even think at the time I understood what I was asking for, because I'm not sure I knew, but it was so cool. So in a room, suddenly I have Michael Bath, Kevin Crowley, Dale Hodges, Pepper Sweeney, who is a major LA film voiceover guy, and Buzz Davis, and Mindy Hidehouse, Carter Bratton, and myself, and there were others. Now I'm trying to remember how that whole group came together, or who they all were. But we decided we were going to just do a show together. And we decided we wanted to do Tracy Letts' Superior Donuts. Well, at the time, it had never been done in Cincinnati, nor in this region. So we, again, that thing where you're just asking for something crazy, this new little basement theater that's writing 8 equity contracts. I actually won't say who, because they don't live here anymore, but a former director of another theater here in town came to me after we announced what we were doing and sat there and leaned back in their chair in my little tiny theater and said, "What are your intentions with theater in Cincinnati?" And at the time, my partner of the space that I said she's from another country, she just looked at him, got up, walked out and slammed the door. And I sat there with this person who is no longer a director of a theater here, and said, "Well, we're just going to do good work. I don't, you know." So that was kind of my first interaction with realizing how circled up things were, and that I was ostentatious enough to go, "Oh, I want to use all the actors in Cincinnati," that. But what was great is that we all sat in that room and realized that they had power over their own work. And that was something, they loved being on everybody else's stage, but now they were going to get to decide what they wanted to do. And we went on to produce for 5 years what we feel like is some of the best theater in Cincinnati, because me and you were no more than 3 feet from the actors at any given time. So much so that sometimes during a show, we would have to remove someone's wine glass from the set during the show while we were in the show. But the reason I bring this up is because those folks really were instrumental. That list could go on, and I'm sure I probably left somebody really wonderful off the list that I shouldn't have, but that group grew and grew to really being a powerhouse of Cincinnati's most notable actors at this time. But the Tracy Letts things was funny because we wanted rights to the play, and dramatists said, "Oh, no. This is, we're going to save this for Big House." And at that time, another big house had it reserved. So I wrote to that artistic director, and she released it for us, and that was step 1, which was a great gift. She saw who we were hiring. She saw that we were writing contracts, so she knew we were legit, but tiny. And then we, again, asked dramatists, and they said no. So then we started writing to Tracy Letts. And I wrote to Tracy 3 times. Finally got a call from dramatists, and they said, "Tracy has released the rights to you. We only paid $75 per show." And on that first day of the show, of the opening, we only ran it like 2 weekends because we were like, "Oh, it was around the block in Clifton, literally around and down to the next block. We had people sitting in the windowsills. Sorry, fire code. But it was this crazy moment of, okay, this is what the power of community does. This is what breaking down the walls between who's allowed on stage and who's not. And that's how we produced then for the next 5 years. And all of those people were instrumental in choosing what shows we did and why we did them. And my partner in that initiative is Kevin Crowley, and that is my actual current partner. That is my my partner of my love. But Kevin was the lead in that production back then. And Kevin is a former Second City Steppenwolf player. Actually, he was on stage with Tracy and knew him. And at the time, we should have just brought him in to help us get rights. But I was like, "Let's do it on my own." And I didn't really know completely everything, his connections back then. But Cincinnati is so fortunate to have so many incredible actors here with crazy pedigree of the shows and things they've done. We're just lucky that they've stayed here, that they go away and then they come back. But as I said earlier, Cincinnati doesn't seem to give you up once it gets its claws in you.
Tell me how you came to own this beautiful space. Tell me about how you found Liberty Exhibition Hall.
So the Liberty Exhibition Hall, I guess 8 years ago now, I got a phone call from a commercial real estate agent, and he said, I just bought a theater. My wife said to call you. Because his daughter had been in my program in Clifton. And again, it seems like that's a theme in my life. Like it's just somebody I've interacted with. Maybe that's kind of how everybody's lives are, but it's always the next thing comes from this wonderful, unlikely, place. And so I came to look at it, and he said, well, what would you do with this? And I was like, oh, what would I not do with this? Yeah. And so we've actually been leasing this building from him all of these years with the intent to purchase. We are very fortunate that we are the only people. I say we because ideally the nonprofit sector of this company should be the one to purchase the building so that it stays in the hands of the arts organization itself. So whether or not that happens exactly like that, I don't know, but we are actually coming to the place that we're going to start finalizing that purchase, and excited about that. But we've been, I know people throw this word around, but we've been very blessed because he could have sold this 10 times over, and we are the only people it's for sale to. And he has helped us keep this building here and back open to the public by just grabbing it off the auction block. It was being bid. He was being bid against by a brewery. There's nothing wrong with breweries, but dang, that would have been sad. So, yeah. So we're grateful to him, and yes, ideally in the next year or so, once we own it, then we'll be able to apply for grants for, bringing some improvements into the building that are needed. So.
No, that's awesome. And so you'll officially own it here pretty soon, hopefully.
Yeah, that's the hope. I think the community might, hopefully be involved in that too. That's, for a different question, but the Liberty ideally should belong to everyone. And so whether we secure it privately or through the nonprofit, it remains to be seen, and partially on how much the community wants to contribute to this staying in the community. What do I know about this building? It was 1909. There's some debate if it was the first vaudeville silent film house. We are told that it is. Not that it was the first vaudeville or silent film, but it was the first combination house. We do know that its sister is still present on Mohawk Place. So that building is the same designer, architect, builder, owner. So we were fortunate to get to go in, although I know it's in disrepair and they're hoping to get it revived. We got to go in and see what this place used to look like, because this building has gone through a lot of changes. We know that our facade was washed off in 1937, so it used to have an enclave with a beautiful little ticket booth. And the one picture that exists out there, if you blow it up, there is a man in the ticket booth. And it's kind of fun because I want to believe that that's Henry. And it might be, I don't know. But we were told by a woman who played for the silent films here, and her grandson or great-grandson did a little bit of an oral history with her. And she said that she played here and that this house was always used as both silent film and vaudeville, and that it was Mr. Levy's baby, Levy's baby, because he did have 5 houses apparently altogether. 3 were just film and 2 were vaudeville silent film. And that, but that this was his crown jewel. It had over 200 lights outside around the perimeter of the building. I don't know if there were no neighbors back then. And it was called the Liberty, but it was also called the Cumminsville Theater. If you see the C up here, I tell people it's for Carol, but it's not. And then he died. So the 17 flood happened, and he was still alive then to bring this back to its grandeur. In 37, he was gone by then. And I'm not completely aware of how many times it changed hands. I do know that the Deaf Club of Greater Cincinnati then ended up owning it for almost 73 years. And that is who we acquired it from, was the Deaf Club. And they still meet here. They've dwindled down from about 900 members to about 50 active. We're so pleased that they still are making use of this beautiful building and that they were such great stewards of it, because if you can see that this beautiful proscenium around the stage is one of the pieces we get to keep from the flood. We do believe that it went down about another 20 feet, because when you come into the theater on the first floor now, you're actually on the original rake of the floor, because we've had to level it a little bit in order to put in our wonderful lounge, which is our throwback to the 70s music venue and small theater, all originally curated with great original furniture and artwork and such. But you can see that original rake, and there would have been a little small orchestra pit. And we believe that that's probably where the contents of the theater are, because the buildings on both sides of us have created little pinholes and seen that their buildings also had basically a tomb from 37. It's how they did a lot of the cleanup. They would open up the lowest point of the building, throw everything in, and concrete it over, tomb it over. So that we believe is there. We've had several people be like, let me drill down and see what I can find. I'm like, no, whatever is down there needs to stay there. But we don't know that for sure, but that's what we believe. And then this floor, we were told by the Deaf Club, this floor that we're on now is put in about 39. That's what they were told. And that it is kind of a rare hardwood. So we had it refinished, and it's only oiled. We've never lacquered it again. You can see the old lacquer that's on the stage front. That's what this whole floor looked like. And we thought it's better served to let it breathe. And but that's what we know. That's what I know about the building. My office is the old it's the old film room. And where we are now, this floor was most likely extended off of the first balcony. And the second balcony is where my office is, and that's also where the person running the film would have been, the film booth. So it takes a little bit of imagination to kind of see what it was. I think we lost some grandeur in some ways, but the building, was so beautifully adapted and kept alive by the Deaf Club, and whatever happened in that brief time between the Deaf Club getting it and the flood. But I love that people cared along the way. This is very much a patchwork quilt in some ways, that everybody has done their best. And the Deaf Club did so many cool things in here, like put in the bar downstairs, the original 70s bar. They put it in 69. They put in the 80s bar behind you. And then they kept the beautiful turn-of-the-century proscenium intact, as well as we have a fly space. And in the fly space is all of the old iron pulleys, like Moulin Rouge, big sweaty guys. We even have pieces of rope still there. My dream is to pull all the hardware from the fly space and have a sculptor create some kind of interesting sculpture for the apex of the building. That's the long-term dream. So anybody wants to volunteer for that? a welder, designer. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. It is like a patchwork. I love that. It's neat. You let me crawl up into the hatch once and see those,
I
those
did,
pulleys. Those
yeah.
are so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so neat. Actually, that's a good segue too. Do you want to maybe talk about all the different groups and performers and people who are here presently, and kind of how they interact with the space?
Yes. So the Liberty is, we like to think of it as a social enterprise, a nonprofit social enterprise. The reason being that everything that happens here falls into 3 categories generally. So community engagement, of course, and then arts education, and also an incubator for artists who are working professionally yet possibly don't have a space or a platform to see just how far they can take their art, and giving them an opportunity to bring what they do to the general public. So everything that happens here kind of falls into those 3 categories. And the reason I put it that way is because we have a model that exists, whether it's through theater or dance or comedy or singing or any kind of expression here, even writing, where we're constantly asking those who are professionals in that field to bring what they do here, and then allow space for those who are training as well, or wanting to learn more, or wanting to just be in that community, to make space for them. Because in every city, Cincinnati's no different, you often see these polarized things happen, where those who have been fortunate enough through hard work and their talents to rise to the top of their field, that they live in a different access world than those who are working professionally but just haven't been introduced to the right place or person, or don't have the resources to rent out a theater or a stage, or even lights, and microphones and musical instruments become insurmountable for artists who are giving their all to their work, but are possibly just starting out. When I say starting out, it doesn't even mean that they're young. It means it's a new initiative. So we very much see ourselves as an incubator, constantly bringing those communities of those who do and those who are doing together. And then our arts education is huge. As I've mentioned, Kids Act Out, and we have 8 or 9 weeks, depending on the summer, of productions here, where the kids come in on day 1. It's a very specific methodology of how we cast them. They do goal settings. We have our staff members dedicated to checking in with them all week, and journaling, and all of these activities around putting up the production, so that they're learning, this is how you do it, this is how you put up a production. And their ages 5 to 15. We keep them together. It's a little bit of a Montessori approach in that way. And by the end of the week, we have cast, learned, rehearsed, understood what goes into creating characters and making choices, justifying choices, all of these things that professional actors know they have to do. We're instilling in 5 to 15-year-olds, but in a way that they can hear it and understand it. And by the end, they have this wonderful full hour and a half length production to invite their friends and family to on Saturday. And we write, all of our scripts are written in-house, myself and one of my former students who graduated from NYU 2 years ago in dramatic writing, Frances, and now she's working on 2 Broadway shows as assistant to the writer. But she and I write all of our scripts, and we only use live musicians. So again, it's that idea that these students right away are getting to be able to work and see people that have grown up in that field and go on in it. They're working with them firsthand. And then we move on to the next show the next Monday. So that's what summer looks like. And then with my schools, I'm bringing different versions of that process into schools. And I'm in 7 schools right now, but really I'm focused mainly on all the curriculum taking the principles and practices of theater and helping it to connect to their social and emotional and academic wellness. So that's our primary goal. And at the same time, then if they want to go on, they have a great foundation. We don't, I never speak down to children. We learn stage direction. I don't say move over there. I say move, stage right, up stage left. And even a 5-year-old, after that immersive period of time, knows those things. So that's one big aspect of it, is that we're giving them a foundation if they want to go on to pursue it. But for most kids, they want to enjoy it, but we hope that we've given them skills that will really embed in them no matter what they are doing, especially how to interface their internal world with their external environment, which is something, I wished I'd even had very young.
Okay, so you said community engagement, arts education, and what was the third piece?
And the incubator.
Oh, and the incubator space.
Yeah, that's because like our jazz musicians last night, our jazz lab, it happens on Mondays. I know everybody says this, but truly, we have the best jazz set in Cincinnati on Monday nights. All of the folks who are the who's who of jazz are here on Monday nights, not because they have to be, but because they want to be. And it's curated by Justin Dawson, who's an amazing musician, and we have Steve Schmidt on piano last night. We had Tony Franklin on drums. We have Mike on trumpet, and that was just our house band last night. Then second set is sit-in, and again, that component of now you have CCM students, you have musicians that come from Louisville and Indianapolis and Lexington now to sit in, because second set, they can get up there and enjoy. If they're already professionals in their own world and field, then they've gotten the opportunity to jam with somebody they wouldn't have, that they've enjoyed or wanted to play with at some point. Or if you're a student, then you're up there, jamming with those guys and women. And singers will pop up, and that's amazing during second set. So it just turns into this very organic community thing that you just can't capture. No Monday night will be the same. And I love that the room is so diverse. I love that. I think if I could find more rooms and spaces like that anywhere in the world today, if I could just pick that up and replicate it 1,000 times, I would be very happy. But it's a very special room. But what you see down there is what we're trying to do with the children. It's what we're trying to do with dancers. It's what we're trying to do with anyone who has the desire to create community around their art form. So that incubator is the best word I know to describe it. And then the community portion of this building is because we try to make this building affordable to people, that they can actually come in and use this beautiful place to throw their dream party or whatever. And back to that nonprofit social enterprise, that also helps us keep the doors open, right? But all of these things are designed and built on the idea that after being propped up with some seed money or foundation, either by what they're bringing in as artists or what they've been able to secure through a grant or something, then they are able to grow that particular initiative to where it supports itself and then is able eventually to contribute to the building overall. So that is one way that we keep the building open. That's why we are a social enterprise, because we actually believe in creating business models that help sustain this building, that we're not constantly dependent upon federal grants or anything like that, which again right now is a huge thing, and it shouldn't be. We never thought that this would happen, but that people, major houses in the United States would be afraid of losing their funding because of their content. But we were built a little differently. Now, to say that, we still need to be more aggressive because this is such a bigger, the nonprofit has grown so huge that we do need to have more investment from places that give out grants. And that's on us to now go and apply more and things like that. But we are fortunate that we have been built on a different type of model, which I think is more sustainable through times like this. But now I'm rambling. What I was saying about the community, how making it affordable, is we were able to get a liquor license during COVID, like something good that came out of that. We're one of the only nonprofits with a full 7-day-a-week license. So, we're just like any neighborhood bar, except for we're not, because we're not open like that. But that allowed us to also have another income, coming in when our programming is open. And we're really big on offering NA things like and that sort of thing. So it's not just in teas and things like that. So it's not just built around alcohol. But so now if you want to throw a party here, or you have something special that you want to use the space for, we find creative ways of letting you be here. So it's not just a flat rental rate. We have nonprofit rates, we have community rates. Those community rates are quite fun because if you think you'll have 50 people coming to whatever it is you're doing, and you think that they will be buying tea and Coke and a beer, all but 200 of what they spend comes off your rental price. So that way, what turns out to be normally on a weekend, if you were to rent the whole building for $1,200 or something like that, you can get that bill down to $200. There's some other things, like we make you responsible for helping to clean and keep the place tidy. It's a group effort. But we hope that the community will feel like this is a space that is theirs too. And in turn, they're helping keep it here. Because it does take a village. There's no big pot of gold keeping this building here. So we actually, for our own demographic purposes, we realized that in 2024, in 2024 alone, there were 63 different initiatives that happened here. And some of those are one-offs, and then some of them are reoccurring. Some of our prized reoccurring things are, as I mentioned, the Deaf Club of Greater Cincinnati still meets here, and we are honored that they do. We also have Monday nights, our jazz community, as we mentioned. Now that has branched off to most weeks. There is another music initiative that is was born out of the jazz night. So a musician will come and rent the lounge for their own experience, or private concerts and things like that. Then we have swing here, Cincinnati Swing. So we have anywhere from 75 to 250 people come and dance here every Thursday, and they do an amazing class before to break the ice for some folks who want to do it but don't feel like they know how. And then it goes into a citywide dance. We have we are the home to When They Produce, the only Latin theater company in Cincinnati. And this is actually the third iteration of that. The other two, one moved to Chicago and one moved to New York and are producing. So again, that incubator idea. And we love that when they do their shows, they often do their shows in Spanish with English subtitles. And we love that. We also have, of course, all of our children's programming. Then just in the last month, Ensemble Theater held their fundraiser here for their cabaret night, as downstairs is a beautiful cabaret vibe. We also had Cincinnati Men's Choir here. We also have themed karaokes, and we like to theme them. We're hoping to even theme them more around particular movies or, of course, decades, but also music theater, again, trying to do something a little different. We try to not repeat what's being done. We hope that, we have no need to try and do what our neighbor's doing, but feel like, oh, we're going to do it better or something. We'd like to we're mindful in that way, that we like to look around even in our community and say, how can we do something and do it differently? We have spoken word nights. We have education. We 2 years ago, we did a whole series of sex education nights here. So we also have a boxing gym in the front, in our storefront, because this really is called an exhibition hall for a reason. It is a community space. It is a space for everyone. And what a lot of people don't know, I think, is before there were convention centers, places like Music Hall were the place that people did all kinds of things. There were sports there, which is hard to imagine now, and fine arts. And so when I gained this building 8 years ago, I thought really long and hard about how do I hearken to its days of being the Liberty Theater at the time, which was the last name I could uncover, and at the same time say what it really is. And that's when we decided to make our storefront more of a sports or health and wellness initiative, and at the same time fine arts here and education. So yes, it is. We just did a major fundraiser. One of our students who grew up in my program, she had to do a capstone to graduate. So she called it Vivi's Big Idea, and she raised $10,000 for the camps here in this space last weekend. So it's just constantly, we have CCM here a lot. Interestingly enough, their students only get to participate in, I think, 3 performances a year. And because the student body is quite large, it's hard for them to always feel like that they've done enough performing during their time there. And so we are a wonderful annex for them. We also hosted Transmigration, their big original work series. And many original works happen here on this stage. We've also started producing the Clifton Players again. God-awful name. We'll change that name. But we've started producing again. We just did Zena Camblin's work, The Guest. And Zena Camblin wrote Fiona the musical and Wrecking Ball for Shakespeare Company. She also is a TV and film writer, and she lives in New York, but she grew up in Clifton. And this was her take on her birth story, as she was originally born in Missouri, and it's kind of a quick, neat story. She was born in Missouri she's biracial. She was born to a white woman in Missouri, and her father she never got to know, but she ended up going back and was adopted by a couple in Clifton. She ended up going back, of course, looking for her roots, and had an interesting, crazy experience meeting her birth family, and that's what this play was about. So we were fortunate to get to this amazing national playwright and TV writer. She wrote on Wu-Tang, and get to do her personal work here. But again, I think that's often what this space serves, is that she said, no, she could have put this play anywhere, but she wanted it to be here, and specifically down there in a particular corner of the room. She felt very connected to give us her story. So yeah, this place speaks to people, and we try to keep the door open so that it's here for their idea, their work. In 2020, I was sitting in my driveway in my car, which is my other office, where I do my best thinking.
Me too.
Yeah,
that's exactly how I am. Yes.
It's because it's from mothering. I think it's because of mothering, because it's this quiet space.
You're in this isolated, beautiful, quiet space.
Yeah, and even when it's not quiet, they're at least constrained. So it's like the car, man. Parents' best friend.
That's my office, for sure.
No, so I was sitting there, and I literally applied on my phone, sitting in my driveway. I was like, if I don't do this, I will never do this. And it had always, it was kind of funny because you're right. I had actually had the opportunity 2 years before that to come over and do the modern dance department. The woman at the time that was the interim director there, she had me come over, and I got to do basically like an internship with the modern dance department. So I got to dance with the modern dancers for a year. That was amazing. And so it just kept the college kept circling in my life. And then I just decided I gotta figure this out. And I also had, I'd also been over there as a person, as an advisor to their verbatim project. Their freshmen do a verbatim project, like an Anna Devere Smith kind of thing. And I got to go over and be an advisor for students, and saw some of my students that have been in my programs over there now as students. And so you're right, like this place kept circling, and I knew everyone there. And I had met with the director of the department, who's now gone. I met with him years before, and he said, "Why would you want to do this now? Because you have what you want. You're respected as an actor, and you get jobs, and you have a theater now. Why do you want this?" And I didn't. At the time, it kind of talked me out of it, not in a bad way, but he was right. Like, what was I trying to prove? But I knew that there was something more inside of me, that I needed to finish this thing. And so I applied, and they had just opened up a new program at UC, and it was interdisciplinary. And I was in the first graduating class of the interdisciplinary program, and I was the first person to graduate with a BA in dramatic performance and English. So, and I was very grateful to CCM because they really worked with me. They had not normally unlocked that gate, but also that was a new program. So now maybe there will be others that can do that as well. But before, it was either simply you come through CCM with an acting degree or music theater degree or stage management, so on and so forth. But being able to come in and receive a degree through interdisciplinary was just not something they had allowed before. So I was extremely lucky to have those doors opened for me. So I did end up graduating from the College of Arts and Science and CCM, and I have a dramatic performance in English BA from there. So, and I got to assistant director main stage show. That was amazing, under Brant Russell. So that was incredible. I got to TA 2 classes there and get to know students and how they're thinking more, which is real, again, an invaluable experience. So.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool. And now I am just starting my journey to get my degree in therapeutic licensure for drama therapy. So that's something that hopefully will be finished in 2 years. So, and that literally just started. So we have one full-time staff member, other than myself. Currently, my position, and has been since 2009, is not funded through the theater. I don't, at this point, I do not take a salary from here. And that's, certainly been challenging at times, different times of my life. But now the children's programming, the schools and that sort of thing, they're kind of helping more to sustain me. And but the building itself, we can afford one employee. Her name is Mindy Heighthouse, and she is incredible. I met her in a show we were doing together years ago, when we first were producing with the adult company. And she is our everything here for keeping us going, keeping us with the things that we need, and keeping us organized. I'm very grateful for her. but she is our one employee. Now we have a slew of volunteers. And then we also have our bartenders are all paid here. Also with that social enterprise idea, there is one rule we have here. And it's so funny because I think you and I talked about this when we first met, that any artist that is performing here needs to get paid. So you can't bring a production in here and not pay your actors. That is one of the rules of being here. And, I realize we all can't pay a lot at times, but they have to be paid something. We have no desire in any way to have any program here that will exploit actors or any artists. So yes, but then a lot of volunteers, especially around keeping the building up and cleaned. Also, my former husband, he is my partner with the Jazz Lab because he's a musician. So he, when we got the bigger space, we were able to expand, and he helped be the visionary with myself on bringing live music here. So the lounge portion of that is but he's also a volunteer. So the conception of the lounge, again, always thinking, how do we build something that community needs, wants? We hope we've got that right. And how do you build a space and bring in another stream of revenue as well as serve artists and community? Again, this constant idea of how to use the space for those goals. And so we were gifted that beautiful red carpeted, red topped bar U that, when I look at it, man, it's like a time capsule. And we were so fortunate that it just was in such great shape. We were like, what should we do? And so we actually hired a company, another nonprofit company, to kind of guide us through the process of thinking it through. At the same time, what came out of that process, some cool things came out of it, but really we still didn't feel like it had hit the mark. Like nothing seemed exactly right. And then Craig and I were down there one day and we were like, we should absolutely build off of what is here. And what was here is it's somewhere between like your best friend's dad's basement from the 70s and, depending on your age, or grandfather's basement from the 70s, and an elk lodge. Meets some really cool lighting and some incredible furniture. And so we built that out as to pay homage to both the Deaf Club and that really cool bar that we inherited. We built the bar back and then started sourcing all of the furniture and all through COVID. And then we opened, I think, during COVID still, but obviously in a modest way. And then the jazz program was the first real initiative. And that came through meeting Justin Dawson, as well as that early student I told you about, Frances Timberlake. She was here for the summer working with me in our children's camps. And in between her making it to work on Broadway. And she actually knew Justin and said, hey, I have this person you need to meet. And then then Craig and Justin and I kind of fleshed out the idea of what Jazz Night would look like. And that was history. That's what you see now, where it's just so many cool things going on down there. And again, that space is available for, we try to make it affordable to an artist who says, I want to do my first showcase, or not even my first, I want to do my 100th, but I want to do it here. And so we are on, I think it's May 10th. We're having, we've done immersive dance events here a lot. Lotus was that initiative through myself and Ryan Gilreath. And and Vincent. But we're getting ready to try our first immersive dance experience. Think like Sleep No More and Tony and Tina's Wedding Have a Baby. And it's going to be called Play It Again Prom. And you're going to go through the decades of prom, of the different proms. This will be hopefully a citywide initiative. But what's going to be different and kind of fun about it is we're going to have actors all over the room that you'll be mingling with. You're going to have everybody that was like the stereotyped caricature of a prom person, you know, and including we'll probably have some you know, public affection guards around. Break it up. Somebody will probably get mooned. I don't know. No, we're going to have some, it's going to be really fun and immersive. So, but we're actually, the reason that came about is that we were how do we do a dance initiative that people from all different ages would come to? I think I was taken by one of the questions of what is the importance of theater in general for Cincinnati. And I feel like we are just now starting to see the power of integrating, again, not just theater, but all types of expressions. We're now seeing the power of integrating that into people's lives and reminding them that it isn't just a fun, cool thing to say that you're an artist, but that everybody has this in them. But now it's has healing properties that I think are really, really needed right now. And I think as a community, we're kind of ripe for that now. Like we even now know that one of the fields I'm interested in is that people who are dealing with chronic illnesses, we're seeing that when they've learned other ways to use their voice and you know, learn how to organize their thoughts and feelings and then also express them in all different kinds of ways, that their hospital stays are less. Like we're actually seeing, you know, this kind of power through the arts. And I feel like this place is hopefully poised and we're certainly very committed to being on the forefront of that it's not just a place for expression, but that this is actually, we want to be a catalyst for, you know, people actually using the arts in a really real, tangible way, even folks who thought that it had nothing to do with their lives. So that's kind of a goal of our future. And, you know, actors and storytellers I think are repositories for being the keeper of history and story, and then hopefully visionaries as well. So I think that's my plug for why theater is so important in Cincinnati.
Yeah, do you have any other comments on like the Cincinnati performing arts scene or theater scene or anything you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a person, I think that sometimes to my own detriment, I don't see closed doors or windows as an end to my story or my journey. It's just how I am. And I do think in Cincinnati, what part of the reason I created the adult company, part of the reason I choose to train children the way I do and within the arts is because in Cincinnati years ago, my experience was that everybody had really cool things going on, but they were very closed off. It wasn't accessible. And that gives often an artist the feeling that if I'm only good enough, or I only train more, or I only this, or I only that, or I only make friends with the right person, that then these doors will open to me, these stages will open to me. And I would feel like for Cincinnati, that is something that Cincinnati still really needs to work on. Certainly not pointing fingers. I see our houses more and more hiring local, which is great. And I know there has to be a balance between certain houses bringing in from New York and LA and that sort of thing. And Lynn Meyer has been amazing about putting our local actors on stage and on film I mean, it's incredible what's happened with putting them on film here. And I think I'm excited to hopefully see more and more theaters use their power to put people who are living here and investing here, who are working professionally. And when I say that, doesn't mean if you're union or not, but you're following the practices of a professional, and you're keeping up with your craft. I would hope that to see that more in Cincinnati in all areas, more of the integration.